In 2010, a 65-year-old man from Greater Manchester became a millionaire overnight. John Eric Spiby had done what millions dream about. He'd won the national lottery, £2.4 million. Enough to retire in comfort, travel the world, spoil the grandkids. Instead, he used every penny to build one of the largest counterfeit drug operations British police have ever uncovered. An empire worth up to £288 million, run from a converted stable behind his cottage, in a quiet village where neighbors knew nothing. This is the story of how a pensioner became a drug kingpin, how his factory pumped out pills that caused untold harm across Britain, and how the technology he trusted to keep him hidden became the very thing that brought him down. What would you do with £2.4 million? Most lottery winners talk about paying off the mortgage, buying a nice car, perhaps a holiday home in Spain. When journalists interview jackpot winners, they hear the same stories: tears of joy, phone calls to family, plans to be sensible with the money. John Eric Spiby had different plans. To understand what happened next, you need to understand where Spiby lived, and you need to understand why he chose this location for his operation. Lower Green Lane in Astley sits just outside Tyldesley, about 8 miles from Manchester. The area has history. Roman roads once passed through here, connecting the garrison towns of Wigan and Manchester. Saxon settlers gave the village its name. For centuries, it was coal mining country, working class, industrial, the kind of place where people minded their own business. Today, estate agents describe it as semi-rural, old cottages with character, the Bridgewater Canal running nearby, a nature reserve within walking distance. The old colliery has become a museum now, a reminder of the industry that once defined this area. The lane itself is quiet, properties set back from the road, the kind of place where people wave at neighbors but keep to themselves, where you might not notice what's happening behind closed doors, or in converted stables across the yard. Spiby had lived there for years before his lottery win. According to prosecutors, he already had what the judge called a significant criminal record. The exact details weren't specified in court, but one thing was clear. This wasn't a man who suddenly turned to crime after becoming a millionaire. The lottery money didn't change who he was. It just gave him capital to work with, resources to scale up ambitions he'd harbored for years. Within a few years of cashing that winning ticket, Spiby began transforming the stables opposite his cottage into something far more sinister than a storage space. He had the windows frosted so nobody could see inside, installed industrial equipment, brought in supplies under cover of darkness. To anyone walking past, it still looked like an old farm building. Just another outbuilding in a rural area full of similar structures. But he wasn't working alone. An operation of this scale required a team. The gang that would eventually catch the attention of Greater Manchester Police's serious organized crime group involved 4 men: Spiby himself, the financier and landlord, his 37-year-old son, John Spiby, who handled logistics and distribution, a man named Lee Ryan Drury, 45, from Stalybridge in Tameside, who created the front company and managed storage, and the person prosecutors would identify as the principal organizer, the man who ran the day-to-day operations. Callum Dorian, 35, from Eccles in Salford. Dorian was the tech-savvy one, the man who understood that in the modern underworld, you needed secure communications. He used an encrypted phone service called EncroChat, operating under the handle Fallen Soda, a name that would eventually appear in police intelligence files alongside photographs of AK-47s and messages about tablet production. But we'll come back to that. First, let's talk about what they were actually making behind those frosted windows. Diazepam. You might know it by its brand name. Valium, one of the most widely prescribed medications in British history. Doctors have been giving it to patients since the 1960s for anxiety, muscle spasms, and insomnia. It calms the nervous system, helps people sleep in the right doses, prescribed properly. It's a useful medicine. But real diazepam has become harder to get on prescription. Doctors worry about addiction. They've seen the damage long-term use can cause. So they've tightened controls, reduced prescriptions, told patients to find other ways to manage their anxiety, which created a gap in the market. If you can't get Valium from your doctor, you might look elsewhere, online, on the street, from dealers who promise the same blue tablets at a fraction of the cost. Except those tablets aren't diazepam at all. The pills coming out of Spiby's converted stables contained something called atezolum, a synthetic drug that works on the same brain receptors as Valium. But here's the thing about atezolum. It's between 6 and 8 times stronger than pharmaceutical diazepam. Someone who's used to taking real Valium might take the same number of street tablets, expecting the same effect. Instead, they get a dose strong enough to cause what medical professionals call severe central nervous system depression. In plain English, that means their breathing slows, their heart rate drops, they lose consciousness. In high enough doses, or mixed with alcohol or other drugs, atezolum kills. This wasn't some theoretical risk. This was happening across Britain every single day. Scotland has some of the worst drug death statistics in Europe. And benzodiazepines, including atezolum sold as street Valium, are involved in a staggering number of those deaths. One study found atezolum was implicated in over 60% of drug-related deaths in Dundee alone. In Edinburgh, street Valium was killing more people than heroin. Let that sink in. A counterfeit version of a prescription anxiety medication was claiming more lives than one of the most notorious drugs on the planet. The problem had become so severe that Glasgow City Council issued public warnings. A 43% increase in overdose deaths in a single year. People collapsing on the streets. Families burying loved ones who thought they'd just taken something to help them sleep. And the criminal groups manufacturing these pills knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the tablets were inconsistent. That one pill might contain 2 milligrams of atezolum, while the next contained 20. That users had no way of knowing what they were actually taking. They knew, and they kept the machines running anyway. The pills flooding out of that Astley stable weren't medicine. They were playing Russian roulette with people's lives. Between June 2020 and May 2022, the gang spent approximately £200,000 on machinery and raw ingredients, industrial-grade tablet presses, mixing equipment, the kind of setup you'd expect to see in a legitimate pharmaceutical factory. Except this factory had no quality control, no testing, no safety checks. Just production lines churning out fake Valium as fast as the machines could run. How fast? Police would later describe the setup as capable of producing tens of thousands of tablets per hour. Let that sink in for a moment. Every 60 minutes, another mountain of potentially lethal pills ready for distribution. They sold each tablet for 65 pence. Bulk buyers got better rates. 1,000 tablets might cost you £100. Sell them individually on the street for £1 each, and you've tripled your money. The supply chain was straightforward. Spiby's factories produced the tablets. They were stored in the shipping container on Chaddock Lane, ready for distribution. Runners would collect large quantities and deliver them to regional dealers. Those dealers would break the shipments down further, selling to street-level suppliers who dealt directly with users. At every step, the price went up. At every step, someone took their cut. The economics were staggering. Police estimated the gang produced tablets with a bulk wholesale value between £7.2 million and £12.9 million. But the street value, the money those pills would generate as they passed through dealer after dealer, cut and recut, sold to desperate users in towns across Britain. Between £57 million and £288 million. The margin between production cost and street value was astronomical. Raw etazolum powder purchased from overseas suppliers. Industrial tablet presses that could run around the clock. A few workers to operate the machinery against potential revenues of £250 million. John Eric Spiby, the lottery winner, who could have retired to a quiet life, was sitting on a criminal enterprise worth more than 100 lottery jackpots. And he knew it. In group chats with his co-conspirators, Spiby typed 5 words that would later be read out in Bolton Crown Court. Elon and Jeff best watch their backs. A 70-something pensioner from Wigan comparing himself to Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, 2 of the richest men on the planet. It sounds absurd, delusional even. But look at the numbers. Look at the scale of what they'd built. In his own twisted way, Spiby was running a major manufacturing operation, industrial premises, supply chains, distribution networks, cash flow in the millions. The difference being that legitimate businessmen don't need to frost their windows to stop neighbors seeing inside. As the operation expanded, Spiby bought an industrial unit in Swinton to increase production capacity. Lee Drury created a fake company, complete with a professional website advertising tablet presses, mixers, and packaging machines. On paper, it looked like a legitimate health supplements business. In reality, it was window dressing for a drug manufacturing empire. The operation had grown beyond anything Spiby could have imagined when he first cashed that lottery check. What started in converted stables had expanded into a proper manufacturing network. Multiple sites, storage facilities, distribution channels reaching across the country. But success in the criminal underworld brings its own problems. The more product you move, the more attention you attract, not just from police, from competitors, from people who want a piece of what you've built. And that's where the story takes a much darker turn. Because Spiby and his associates weren't just in the drug business. When police analyzed the encrypted messages from Callum Dorian's Fallen Soda account, they found something that changed the entire complexion of the investigation. Photographs and discussions about firearms. Not just any firearms, military-grade weapons, AK-47s, Uzis, Tech-9s, a Scorpion machine pistol, a Grand Power pistol, silencers, ammunition. The gang wasn't just manufacturing pills. They were facilitating the supply of automatic weapons to organized crime groups across the country. Police later recovered 3 viable firearms from Spiby's property, along with ammunition. Some of those rounds had been modified, ball bearings at the tip, designed to cause maximum damage to human flesh. What they didn't know was that European law enforcement had been working on EncroChat since 2017. French investigators had identified the servers, and in early 2020, they achieved something remarkable. They cracked it. Working with authorities across Europe, French police deployed malware to EncroChat devices. Suddenly, investigators could see everything. Every message, every photograph, every incriminating conversation. On the 13th of June 2020, EncroChat realized they'd been compromised. They sent an urgent message to all users telling them to throw away their handsets immediately. The platform was shutting down. Law enforcement had got inside. Panic spread through the criminal underworld. Phones were smashed, destroyed, thrown into canals and rivers. Evidence burned, stashes moved. But it was too late. The police already had everything. For months, investigators had been reading every message, watching deals unfold in real time, building case files, identifying targets. By the time EncroChat sent its warning, the damage was done. In the UK, the National Crime Agency launched Operation Venetic, the biggest and most significant operation of its kind in British history. Within months, they'd arrested over 700 suspects, seized £54 million in cash, recovered 77 firearms, intercepted more than 2 tons of drugs. And somewhere in that mountain of intelligence, analysts found the fallen soda handle, Callum Dorian, his messages about weapons, his communications with an elderly man in Astley who'd used his lottery winnings to build a drug factory. The net was closing. On the 2nd of April 2022, police made their move. A hire van was spotted leaving the storage container site in Astley. Officers followed it. When they stopped the vehicle, they found Callum Dorian and Lee Drury inside the van. 2.6 million counterfeit diazepam tablets. Street value up to £5.2 million. A significant shipment, police called it. The van had been on its way to a hotel in Manchester for distribution. A meeting had been arranged. Money was expected to change hands. Instead, Dorian and Drury found themselves in handcuffs, their cargo destined for an evidence locker rather than the streets. But that was just the beginning. Police had been watching, building their case, waiting for the right moment to strike. On the 17th of May, 2022, officers executed warrants across multiple properties simultaneously. A coordinated operation designed to catch everyone before they could warn each other, before evidence could be destroyed, before anyone could run. Spiby's cottage. They found the pill factory behind those frosted windows. Industrial tablet manufacturing machinery capable of producing tens of thousands of pills per hour. Raw materials, finished tablets, cash, and hidden in the property, those 3 firearms, the ammunition, the modified rounds. They also found the Swinton Industrial Unit, another factory in development, the shipping container packed with millions more tablets awaiting distribution. John Eric Spiby, his son, and their associates were arrested and remanded into custody. Callum Dorian pleaded guilty. In September 2024, he was sentenced to 12 years for conspiracy to supply firearms and conspiracy to produce and supply Class C drugs. Lee Drury pleaded guilty partway through the trial, 9 years and 9 months. The 2 Spibys maintained their innocence. Both denied any knowledge of the conspiracy. They went to trial at Bolton Crown Court in November 2025. The jury didn't believe them. John Colin Spiby, the son, was found guilty of conspiracy to produce and supply Class C drugs, 9 years. And John Eric Spiby himself, 80 years old by the time of sentencing, guilty of conspiracy to produce and supply Class C drugs. 2 counts of possessing a firearm, possession of ammunition, perverting the course of justice, 16 years and 6 months. When Judge Nicholas Clark K.C. passed sentence in January 2026, he had some pointed words for the elderly defendant. Despite your lottery win, you continued to live your life of crime beyond what would be a normal retirement age. The judge noted that much of the production centered on Spiby's property. That despite his defense team's arguments that Dorian was the principal organizer, Spiby had been senior in both name and role. 16 years and 6 months means Spiby will be 96 years old before he's eligible for release. Almost certainly, he will die in prison. Detective Inspector Alex Brown from Greater Manchester Police's Serious Organized Crime Group summarized what the investigation had uncovered. These 4 individuals showed absolutely no regard for human life or public safety. All they were interested in was lining their own pockets with significant financial gain. They operated a fully industrialized drug manufacturing business, capable of producing millions of counterfeit tablets containing a highly dangerous substance. The volume of tablets we recovered, along with the sophisticated machinery, demonstrated how deeply embedded this group was in the illicit drug supply chain. Alongside the drug production, this group was also linked to the supply of a range of deadly firearms, including automatic weapons and ammunition. In total, the 4 men received sentences adding up to 47 years. Operation Venetic disrupted that network significantly. Over 3,000 arrests, more than 1,200 convictions, nearly 8,000 years in combined prison sentences. 173 firearms recovered. 9 tons of Class A drugs seized. But the demand hasn't gone away. And where there's demand, there will always be someone willing to supply. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of John Eric Spiby's story is how ordinary it seems on the surface. A man wins the lottery, retires to a cottage in the countryside, keeps himself to himself. What none of his neighbors knew was that behind those frosted windows, machines were running constantly, churning out fake Valium, feeding an addiction crisis that kills more than 1,000 people a year in Scotland alone. The lottery win that could have been a fairy tale ending became the seed money for a criminal empire. The quiet retirement cottage became a drug factory. The grandfather became a gun runner. If you found this story as shocking as we did, hit subscribe. We cover cases like this every week. Crimes that happen in ordinary places, committed by people you'd never suspect. Until next time.